Wellington Northway. Some West Coast Main Line Scottish Expresses today. See what you think. This one is the oldest of today's locomotives, originally built in 1902. It's a Midland compound, originally designed by Samuel Waite Johnson for the Midland Railway, and there were 45 of these built. The Midland Railway had their small locomotive policy, and if they needed to take an express up to Scotland, they would simply double head with two 440 locomotives. And when the LMS came along in 1923, the policy kind of continued. So they built more compounds. This one was built in 1924. They built another 195 440 compounds. So I'm going to attempt to double head the first train today with a Scottish Express, double-headed. The Royal Scot was the name of a train that ran between Glasgow and London Euston on the West Coast Main Line. And it would leave at 10 AM. One would leave from Euston, one would leave from Glasgow. In the very early days, these were double-headed with small locomotives, and the LMS continued with this practice into the 1920s. In the mid-1920s, the LMS were beginning to rethink the small locomotive policy. It was actually quite expensive because you got two crews on the train instead of one, as well as the extra fuel needed to get two locomotives running instead of one. They borrowed Launceston Castle from the Great Western Railway, which was a 460, and as we know, the Castles were terrific locomotives. And the LMS said, we want one of those. And the Great Western Railway said, get your own 460. So they borrowed some plans from the Southern Railway of the Lord Nelson class. So I do believe the firebox design came from the Southern Railway Lord Nelson class. We are looking here at the Royal Scot class. So in 1927, Henry Fowler, who was the chief mechanical engineer at the LMS at that time, designed the Royal Scot. This is the class of locomotives. We're looking here at number 6106, Gordon Highlander. The doyen of the class was called Royal Scot, number 6100, and I do believe that's preserved. Although, there's a story to that. So these locomotives were powerful enough to run on their own. When William Stanier came to the LMS in the mid-30s, part of his brief was to design some even bigger, more powerful locomotives. So we went up a notch or two. And along came the Duchesses. We're looking here at one of the first 5 that was built, number 6224, Princess Alexandra, which was built in 1937, I do believe. The train was called the Coronation Scot rather than the Royal Scot. but it was just like a super duper Royal Scot. They did it to compete with the East Coast main line, with the Flying Scotsman and Mallard and streamlining and speed and all that. So they had to come up with something similar. So we've got the Go Faster stripes, the silver Go Faster stripes, and all this blue and silver coaches, Caledonian blue with the silver stripes, that make a splendid looking train, and we're going to see it running today. Terrific. Well, in the 1960s, the Duchesses were banned from the West Coast main line because they reckoned the smoke was too near the wires which were being built. Which brings us on to our last locomotive of today. Well, I can't make a video called the Royal Scot and not include the Royal Scot, can I? Number 87001, named Royal Scot. Class 87s were actually called the Electric Scots. They started work in 1973 when the electrification all the way between Euston and Glasgow was completed. And they were very, very, very powerful. No trouble with them on the hills. Well, no trouble with our hills today either, as you will see.